If you are not paying attention and you're ignoring these key categories in fantasy football, then you are definitely overlooking these 5 running backs that could be game changers for your fantasy lineup in 2024. Yo, what is going on, Headliner Nation? In today's video, I am going over my top 5 rising running backs that I talked about in my Volume 2 Efficiency series that saw the biggest jump when it came to the numbers they got via volume to the numbers that they got in efficiency. And if you are overlooking and ignoring some of the efficiency stats that we're going to talk about today, then you are ignoring some running backs that could absolutely be big time playmakers for you. And maybe we have the next big breakout candidate as well. And when talking about these running backs, I'm going to be showing you their current ADP over on Underdog. And if you're interested in getting some best ball drafts in, then make sure you head on over to Underdog and get signed up right now using code word headliners. And right now is the perfect time to get signed up because you can get our 2024 fantasy football draft guide for absolutely free. All you need to do is go to their website or download their app. Make sure you use code word headliners when you sign up and make a deposit of at least $10. You're going to get a deposit bonus. You're going to get a special pick that you can play that's almost guaranteed to hit. And on top of it, you're going to get our draft guide for this year for absolutely free. Now, this video is not just about best ball, but we're going to use that ADP because right now, realistically, it's the best ADP to look at, and then we can try to adjust on what we think is going to happen for redraft leagues. The first running back that we're going to take a look at today is going to be James Conner, and we talked about him in depth when I did my efficiency video last week because honestly, he was one of the best when it came to efficiency last season, and I think that shocked a lot of people given what that Arizona Cardinals offense looked like. He saw a 16 spot increase from where he finished in my volume video to where he finished in my efficiency video. And you can see why with the categories on screen. Yards after contact per attempt, avoided tackles per attempt, yards per attempt, top 3 in all of those categories. And he finished quite high in a lot of other ones as well. And a big reason why, and what we've already talked about, are injuries. James Conner obviously has been one of those running backs that has been nagged by injury since he entered the league. And in 2024, it's going to be a lot of the same thing. He should end up being the lead back in Arizona with no issues there. He should end up seeing a decent amount of volume when he's healthy, and he could end up being just as efficient this season as he was last season, given that they've added Marvin Harrison Jr. and they have beefed up that offense a little bit. And the concerns I have go right back to injuries. Because if James Conner were to miss like a 4-game stretch this season, just like he did last year, Trey Benson is going to be waiting in the wings. And this is a guy that absolutely could come out and play well enough to maybe not take James Conner's job fully when he comes back from injury, but at least cut into his playing time so significantly that even the high upside that we get from him in terms of efficiency, James Conner will not be able to make up for because he won't be getting enough touches for it to even matter. And the volume stats, once again, were his worst last year. The receptions, the receiving yards, the rushing attempts. And a lot of that has to do with missing that 4-game stretch in the middle of the season. So hopefully when it comes to James Conner, we can get a guy that when we draft him, we're not spending too high of a pick on him. Right now, his ADP over on Underdog is pretty manageable. Because if I want to invest in James Conner right now, it's going to be a pick around 94th overall as the RB27 off the board. You're legit drafting a guy at that point is like your RB3. And James Conner as an RB3 is actually pretty darn perfect because once again, you've probably already invested in 2 running backs ahead of him that are probably going to be safer and give you the output that you need on a consistent basis. And then if something goes wrong with James Conner, he's going to be a guy that you are utilizing as a flex anyway. And on top of that, if you draft James Conner, potentially handcuff him with Trey Benson, and then if something does go wrong, you've got the guy that's going to step in anyway. So yeah, I think we need to take this opportunity to make a game plan to try and fit James Conner into our draft strategy in the later rounds. he's going to be a guy that when he's healthy and when he's playing, he's going to give you some week winning upside. But if he ends up missing any time with injuries or whatever, then you can end up backing him up. You can put someone else in the flex. And in all honesty, missing James Conner for that amount of time doesn't end up killing your season. Last season, I was all in on Kenneth Walker. And it was really a mixed bag of return because obviously dealing with an injury last season, he didn't give us the full year of output that we would have liked. But when he was on the field, he was pretty good. And a big reason why was his efficiency, because for the second straight year, Kenneth Walker was pretty darn good in almost every efficiency category you can find. Avoided tackles per attempt, he was second. In the passing game, yards per target, yards after the catch per reception, second and first. He did very well across the board. And people are going to try to fade Kenneth Walker once again because of Zach Charbonnet being in the backfield. But Zach Charbonnet is not the starter. Kenneth Walker is. And if Kenneth Walker can stay healthy, a lot of these efficiency numbers we see will get even better in 2024. And his worst statistics all came from the volume portions that we took a look at. Rush yards, targets, receptions. He missed 2 games last season, and he also had a couple of other games where he was in and out because he was banged up. And unfortunately, that's just the name of the game when it comes to running backs. And just like we talked about with James Conner a minute ago, really it depends on where you draft Kenneth Walker. If you have to draft him as a mainstay of your roster, then you definitely have to be prepared to have enough running back depth. But if you draft him as a guy that you're not relying on weekly, then you probably are going to end up being okay. And right now, his ADP is going to be borderline of finding that sweet spot because he's going about 66 overall right now, is the RB16 off the board. So for those of you out there that are heavy running back drafters, there is an opportunity that Kenneth Walker is going to end up being your RB3, which is absolutely fantastic. Now, if you're not investing in running back super early though, then Kenneth Walker probably becomes more of an RB2 candidate for your team. And that is where depth comes into play. Because more than likely, when Kenneth Walker is healthy and he's on the field, we're going to see good enough efficiency from him that he'll have a very safe floor with some upside on any given week. Zach Charbonnet is still going to get some touches, so maybe the volume isn't that of a high upside RB1, but it's going to be just enough that if he stays super efficient in any given game, he's going to challenge for that back half of RB1 numbers. But then if something does happen and Kenneth Walker misses time, you've added enough depth around him that you can end up sliding someone into the RB2 spot, and then you don't end up missing a beat with your roster. And one of the reasons that he can be ultra efficient is the offense around him. Weapons galore with Jackson Smith-Njigba, Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf. The biggest thing for him this year will be some more consistent quarterback play from Geno Smith. Or if Geno Smith can't get it done, they go to Sam Howell, and maybe he's not super consistent, but he's slinging it down the field so often that Kenneth Walker would have plenty of room to run. How about my boy, David Montgomery? Now, he is one of the running backs on this list. When you take a look at him, he saw an 11-spot jump from his volume to his efficiency final ranking. However, his volume ranking wasn't all that bad, and it was really attributed to the fact that he just doesn't make an impact in the passing game because of all the weapons around him. In fact, of his 3 best categories last season, in which he finished 3rd in all of them, 2 of them came from the volume side, while 1 of them was only from the efficiency side. Rushing touchdowns and goal line carries. We know when the Lions get close to the end zone, David Montgomery is going to be out there. But then points per snap. Even though David Montgomery played a lot of snaps last season, he ended up scoring a lot of points to go along with it. And then for his worst categories, all 3 of them come from the passing game. So it wasn't that, hey, David Montgomery is super bad in terms of all of his volume. It's just that he was super bad in terms of one area of his volume. It drug that score down a little bit, and then efficiency-wise, he was so good, he saw a nice 11-spot jump with it. David Montgomery is an absolute beast, and he is the perfect running back in terms of finding a balance between the volume and the efficiency. Now, last season, he had 219 carries. I highly doubt that we see him drop under 200. 200. Now, Jahmyr Gibbs is probably going to have a more consistent impact in the run game to begin the year than he did last season. Remember, it was a significant way into 2023 before Gibbs really started getting a lot of volume on a weekly basis. Even if that happens earlier this season, David Montgomery should still see consistent carries and break that 200 mark. And even with that being said, in 219 carries last season, he still ran for over 1,000 yards. To put that in perspective, he only had 18 fewer carries in 2022 with the Chicago Bears, but he ran for almost 220 fewer yards. And right now, his ADP puts him at about 75 overall as the RB 18 off the board. And I don't hate that area, but once again, a lot of it is going to depend on what you do with your team. Now, if you are a heavy running back drafter, then David Montgomery is probably going to look like an RB3 type of player to you, and you may be passing on him at this ADP to end up stacking other positions instead. If you like to build up your running backs, though, he could be right in the area of RB3, which would be perfect for you. Now, if you draft him as your RB2, this is where we need to set expectations right now. If you're drafting him as your RB2 to win you every single week, that's not going to happen. Yes, he's going to have some weeks where he absolutely puts together those numbers, but we should be looking at David Montgomery as a safe RB2, a guy that isn't going to tank our team, a guy that on a weekly basis, we know he's going to get touches because the Lions like to stay balanced. There's a good shot that they're going to be playing from ahead. And on top of that, they're going to be giving him touches. So you're going to be getting some consistent floor from him on a weekly basis, especially because he has the opportunity to score inside the red zone every single week. That is what we need to be looking at. If you set those expectations right now as a guy that you're like, hey, is my RB2, if he gives me mid to low RB2 numbers, I'm absolutely fine with it. Let's lock that in. But if you draft him as your RB2 and you hope he's going to give you consistent RB1 numbers, that's where you would probably be a little bit disappointed. David Montgomery is what he is. Set those expectations appropriately. When you're talking about a master of efficiency, Raheem Mostert from last season absolutely pops up. And it is crazy that we are talking about him after he finished as the RB2 last season, because Mostert saw a 10-spot jump from his volume to his efficiency final score. And let this paint the picture for you. His best categories last season: avoided tackles per attempt, second; points per snap, first; points per touch, second. Those are all great on the efficiency side, but on the volume side, it is insane to me that a guy that finished 20th in carries last season was the RB2 overall on the year. And then targets and receptions didn't really do him a whole lot of good, but he didn't make an impact in the passing game, and we knew it. But once again, the efficiency from last year was so insane that it overcame not only getting very, very little work in the passing game, but being ranked 20th in carries. Now, right now, Raheem Mostert is basically being completely overlooked because Devon Achane is being drafted as either a very low-end RB1 or a very high-end RB2. Raheem Mostert's ADP right now is basically non-existent. He is going 96 overall as the RB28. In the comment section down below, can you remind me of a player that finished as high as Raheem Mostert did last season and saw such a huge fall in ADP the year after? I can't think of anybody. And I'll tell you, I'm not as high on Raheem Mostert this year as I was last year. Do I think he could still be good? Absolutely. At this ADP, am I okay with drafting him? Absolutely. But Devon Achane is probably going to see significantly more touches this year than he did last year. But can he stay healthy? They added Jalen Wright in the draft, who is basically a copy of Devon Achane and Raheem Mostert, but a little bit of a bigger back to go along with it. Raheem Mostert, injury-wise, last year was really the first year where he gave you an entirely healthy season for the most part. He is now way past his prime. The dude is well over 30 at this point, and he put together a career year. Is he going to stay on the field in 2024? And really, that's the main reason why there's a big discrepancy in his ADP this season compared to where he finished last year. Now, if you're drafting Raheem Mostert to be your RB2, I'm not on board with it. But if you're taking him later in your draft as a guy that you're like, hey, is my RB3, maybe even my RB4, depending on how many guys you've drafted before him, I am absolutely 100% okay with that, because you're adding a guy that gives you really, really good upside every single week. And last season, he proved to us that he doesn't need all of the touches in the world to be fantasy viable. 20th in carries, RB2 overall. Who cares? Who cares if Raheem Mostert loses a bunch of touches this season to Devon Achane? Jalen Wright, he might get worked in a little bit, but really he's only going to become fantasy viable if somebody goes down with an injury. Wright's not taking a whole lot of touches away from Mostert unless Mostert gets hurt. And the efficiency with Mostert is nothing new because he has showed us in previous seasons that he can do exactly the same thing. So once again, with Raheem Mostert, draft him. Be comfortable drafting him. Who cares if he doesn't get enough volume? If he is an RB3 at best on your team, because where he's going right now, there's no way you're drafting him as your RB2. But as RB3 on your team, it's absolutely fine, because if it's a matchup you don't love, flex somebody else. If he goes down with an injury, flex somebody else. When he comes back from his injury, put him back in, and know that even if he doesn't get 25 touches that week, if he gets 18 touches, he's going to have a shot at well over 100 total yards and a touchdown. The final guy we're going to talk about today is probably one that you did not expect to see in this video, and it is Jerome Ford, who saw a 7-spot increase from where he was in volume last season to where he finished in efficiency. And if you were here all of last season, you know that I was a little tough on Jerome Ford, and for those of you that defended him, I pushed back pretty adamantly at times, because Jerome Ford really was being propped up to something that he was not. But where he is right now, and the numbers that we have right now, really identify him of being exactly what we would want this season. Now, his best categories last season had 1 efficiency and 2 volume. Now, the efficiency side, avoided tackles per attempt, absolutely love that. But the key area that sticks out to me, targets and receiving yards, where he finished 8th in both of those. Now, his worst categories all came on the ground. His carries, his red zone carries, his rushing yards. And a lot of that had to do with kind of going on and off the field, still having Kareem Hunt there. It took him a little bit of time to maybe kind of find some consistency. And because of that, he just didn't have the type of volume that we would have liked. But that might work out perfectly in 2024. Right now, Jerome Ford is being taken 128th overall as the RB40 off the board. Jerome Ford in PPR and half PPR leagues is exactly what I am looking for. This ADP right now is allowing us to draft him as the potential starter for the Cleveland Browns in 2024, given the fact that Nick Chubb, at this point, we don't know what we're going to get. Is he going to be healthy? Is he going to be fully healthy? Is he going to be limited in his workload? Whatever it may be, if we draft him at this ADP and Jerome Ford is the starter at the beginning of the season, awesome. If he's not, who cares? Then we don't have to start him. But he's going to make an impact in the passing game this season. And that is where Jerome Ford becomes interesting, because if he's making an impact in the passing game and he's not getting a ton of carries on the ground, he becomes a guy that we basically paid nothing for in our draft. And now when we have bye weeks or injuries, or maybe a guy that has a tough matchup in a PPR or a half PPR league, we can toss Jerome Ford in. And then at that point, now we get a running back that can offer us maybe 6, 7 targets a game, catch 5 of them, maybe have a shot at a receiving touchdown, put together 50 or 60 receiving yards. Those numbers don't sound glamorous, but if he's the RB6, RB5 on your team or something around those lines, and you're not starting him on a weekly basis, that's exactly the type of depth we're looking for on our team. So yeah, I went from really being against Jerome Ford last season to being all for Jerome Ford at his current ADP right now. And in redraft leagues, I really don't see anything changing unless news comes out about Nick Chubb and it says essentially he's going to start on the PUP list or he's going to miss the first 6 weeks of the season or whatever it may be. If that happens, Jerome Ford's ADP is going to jump significantly. And if it does, we reevaluate at that time. But if you're drafting early and we haven't heard that news about Chubb as of yet, then I'm all on board with Jerome Ford. It's some really nice depth. Yo, Headliner Nation, hopefully you enjoyed today's video, taking a look at my top 5 rising running backs when it came from their volume to their efficiency stats this season. And let me know down in the comments below, at their current ADP that I listed in this video, which one of these running backs are you most interested in investing in if you were drafting right now? But if you enjoy the content, hit the like button for me. Subscribe if you're new here and turn on our bell notifications. So every time that we go live or drop new content, you'll know about it right away. And I think Jake said it in a video last week. Something like 30% of the people that watch our videos are not subscribed to our channel. Let's bring that percentage down. For now though, Headliner Nation, I have to get out of here. Peace out, Headliner Nation. Stay safe and stay healthy. YouTube is probably recommending one of our last videos to you right now. You should check it out if you missed it. I'll see you all in the next episode of the Fantasy Headliners.